The year was 1945. Europe was burning. The once mighty Nazi Empire, which had stretched from the Atlantic coast to the gates of Moscow, was collapsing under its own weight. In the ruins of Berlin, amid the smoke and thunder of artillery, Adolf Hitler, the man who had promised a 1,000-year Reich, was now trapped beneath the earth in his concrete fortress known as the Führer Bunker. This was not just another battlefield. This was Hitler's final mission, not to win the war, but to control how it would end. The beginning of the end. By April 1945, the Allied forces had already torn through Germany. The Americans were advancing from the west, and the Soviets, led by Joseph Stalin, were closing in from the east. Hitler had refused to leave Berlin. His generals had begged him, "Mein Führer, we can still regroup in the mountains of Bavaria." But Hitler, stubborn and obsessed with destiny, replied coldly, "I was born in Germany. I shall die in Germany." So he stayed. The Führer Bunker, buried nearly 30 feet underground, became his final command center, a claustrophobic maze of narrow corridors, thick steel doors, and dim yellow lights. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and despair. The sound of bombs echoed constantly above, shaking the ceiling dust into their coffee cups. The inner circle. With Hitler in the bunker were his most loyal followers: Eva Braun, his longtime companion; Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda; Martin Bormann, his private secretary; and a few remaining officers who still pretended that victory was possible. But even they knew the war was lost. Outside, Berlin was a hellscape. Civilians starved. Soviet tanks rolled through the suburbs. Buildings burned day and night. Still, the radio from the bunker screamed lies of German victories. "Our forces are pushing the Soviets back," when in truth, they were being wiped out street by street. The final orders. On April 22, 1945, during a heated meeting, Hitler's temper exploded. He slammed his trembling hand on the map table and shouted, "The war is lost, but I will not run. I will not surrender." He accused his generals of betrayal, his allies of cowardice, and fate of injustice. His dream of domination had turned into a nightmare of destruction. From that day, Hitler stopped giving military orders. He began preparing for death. He ordered that all documents related to the Third Reich be destroyed. He dictated his political testament, blaming Jews for the war and naming Admiral Karl Dönitz as his successor. Eva Braun, calm yet resigned, refused to leave him. She told a maid, "I will not let him die alone. If he stays, I stay." The siege of Berlin. Meanwhile, the Soviets had reached the heart of Berlin. Artillery fire turned entire city blocks into ashes. German soldiers, old men and teenage boys fought desperately, defending their capital street by street. Inside the bunker, they could hear the explosions growing closer. The ground trembled like thunder as Soviet shells landed just meters away. On April 28, Hitler received shocking news. Benito Mussolini, his fascist ally in Italy, had been captured and executed by his own people. His body hung upside down in the streets of Milan. When Hitler heard this, his pale face turned even whiter. He whispered, "That will never happen to me." He had made up his mind. The mission was decided. If Germany was to fall, he would fall with it. The final night. It was April 29, 1945. The bunker was silent, except for the rumble of distant gunfire. Hitler called in his secretary, Traud Junge, to dictate his last will and testament. He married Eva Braun that night in a quiet ceremony. There were no crowds, no speeches, no salute, only the smell of gunpowder above and the fear of death below. After the brief wedding, Hitler shook hands with his remaining staff. He told them, "I thank you all for your loyalty. It is over." Outside, the Red Army was only a few hundred meters away. Berlin was burning. The end of the Führer. On April 30th, 1945, at around 3:30 p.m., Hitler retreated into his private room with Eva Braun. The others waited in silence. A few minutes later, a gunshot echoed through the bunker. Hitler had shot himself in the head. Eva had taken cyanide. When aides entered, they found the bodies lying side by side. Hitler in his gray uniform, Eva in a blue dress. Their bodies were quickly wrapped in blankets, carried up the narrow stairs, and set ablaze in the garden outside the bunker, as per Hitler's orders. Above them, Soviet soldiers were closing in. Below, the bunker fell silent forever. Aftermath. When Soviet troops finally captured the bunker on May 2, they found only ashes, bloodstains, and scattered papers. The man who had once terrorized the world was gone. Not with a trial, not with surrender, but with self-destruction. Berlin had fallen. Germany had surrendered. The 1,000-year Reich had lasted just 12 years. And so ended the last mission of Adolf Hitler, a mission born of ambition, consumed by hate, and finished in despair. The Last Battle of Hitler, The Fall of the Reich, Part 2. The gunshot that ended Hitler's life also ended an era of terror. But for the world outside the bunker, the war was not yet over. Berlin was still burning. Soviet troops were still fighting street by street, unaware that the man who started it all was already gone. The silence after the storm. When the sound of artillery finally began to fade, the smell of smoke, blood, and burnt iron filled the air. Soviet soldiers advanced carefully, step by step, through the ruins of Berlin. They reached the Reich Chancellery Garden, a wasteland of craters and rubble, and found traces of fire, half-burnt bodies, and the remains of the bunker's walls. Rumors spread instantly. Hitler is dead. No, he escaped to Argentina. He is hiding under another name. The truth was hidden deep under the ruins, and the world was desperate to know it. The Discovery. On May 2nd, 1945, the Red Army officially took control of the bunker. They found scattered maps, charred furniture, and the lingering smell of gunpowder. When Soviet investigators entered Hitler's private quarters, they discovered blood on the sofa, a half-burned carpet, and a strong smell of cyanide. But Hitler's body was unrecognizable, burned beyond recognition. Stalin demanded proof. "Bring me Hitler's remains," he ordered. The Soviets collected pieces of skull and jawbone and sent them to Moscow for verification. Even then, Stalin kept the news secret. He wanted the world, especially the Western Allies, to remain uncertain. The collapse of the Nazi dream. Meanwhile, Germany was collapsing completely. On May 7, 1945, General Alfred Jodl signed the unconditional surrender of all German forces. Across Europe, church bells rang for the first time in years. People wept, sang, and embraced in the streets. The nightmare was over, but at a terrible cost. More than 70 million people had died. Cities were reduced to ashes, and humanity had witnessed the darkest side of its own nature. The hunt for the truth. Even after the war, many refused to believe that Hitler had truly died.
His body had been burned, his grave unknown. Soon, stories began to circulate. Hitler fled to South America. He lives in a secret base in Antarctica. These myths spread like wildfire, feeding books, documentaries, and spy operations. But the truth was far less glamorous. Decades later, in 1970, the KGB quietly confirmed that the remains of Hitler, the skull and jawbone, were indeed real. After testing and comparison with dental records, it was proven Hitler died in his bunker on April 30th, 1945. The Soviet Union then destroyed the remaining fragments to prevent any neo-Nazi worship. The fate of the others. Every figure from Hitler's bunker met a dark end. Joseph Goebbels and his wife poisoned their 6 children and then killed themselves. Martin Bormann disappeared during the escape attempt. His remains were only found in 1972. Eva Braun, the woman who had waited years to marry Hitler, died beside him, loyal till the last breath. Their deaths marked the complete collapse of the Nazi inner circle, once powerful, now reduced to ashes and silence.
A world in ruins. Berlin was now divided into 4 zones, controlled by the Soviets, Americans, British, and French. The world entered a new era, the Cold War. The same allies who had fought together now stood as rivals, pointing nuclear weapons at each other. Germany was split in 2, and from the ruins of Hitler's dream rose the Berlin Wall, symbol of division for the next 40 years. The legacy of a tyrant. Hitler's death did not erase his crimes. The world learned the full horror of the Holocaust, the concentration camps, the gas chambers, the 6 million innocent Jews who perished. During the Nuremberg trials, Nazi leaders were judged and executed for crimes against humanity. It was the first time in history that global law stood above national power. Yet the question remained, how could one man lead an entire nation into madness?
The final reflection. In the darkness of that bunker, Hitler believed he was shaping history, but in reality, he destroyed it. His fall was not just the end of a man, it was the end of an ideology built on hate, lies, and control. The bunker still exists today, sealed under the streets of modern Berlin. No flags, no memorials, just a parking lot above the ruins of the man who once ruled half the world. It stands as a silent reminder. No empire built on fear can last forever. The Secret of Hitler's Remains and Post-War Myths, Part 3. Hitler was gone, but his shadow, his mystery, continued to haunt the world. No grave, no confirmed photographs of the body. Only ashes, rumors, and a war-torn city full of silence. And that silence gave birth to legends. The vanishing body. When Soviet troops entered the bunker, they found what they believed were Hitler and Eva Braun's burnt bodies. But within hours, both were taken away under strict Soviet orders. Only a handful of people knew where they were buried. And that secrecy became the root of every conspiracy that followed. Hitler's remains were secretly buried and reburied several times. First near Magdeburg, East Germany. Later, the KGB secretly dug them up in 1970, burned them completely, and scattered the ashes into a river to ensure no grave could ever become a shrine. Yet the mystery didn't end, because the Soviets said nothing publicly. For years, Stalin himself refused to confirm Hitler's death, even telling Allied leaders that Hitler might have escaped. He is not dead, He escaped to Spain or Argentina, Stalin reportedly said.
The rise of escape theories. The world was desperate for answers, and in that desperation, wild theories grew. By the 1950s and 60s, stories began to appear claiming Hitler fled Berlin before it fell. He traveled through secret tunnels to an underground airfield. A U-boat carried him to Argentina, where he lived under a new name. These stories spread across the world, books, radio shows, and later documentaries all claiming the Führer survived. Many pointed to South America, where several real Nazi war criminals like Adolf Eichmann and Josef Mengele were discovered years later. So people asked, if they could escape, why not Hitler? The Soviet secret files. For decades, the Soviet Union kept Hitler's remains hidden in classified archives. No one outside the KGB was allowed access. Then, after the fall of the USSR in the 1990s, secret documents were finally released. Inside were photographs, bone fragments, and dental remains stored for decades in a metal box marked Object Number 1. DNA testing was later performed on what was believed to be Hitler's skull fragment. Shockingly, the results showed it belonged to a woman under 40, possibly Eva Braun, or someone else entirely. This discovery reignited the question: did the Soviets really have Hitler's remains, or someone else's?
The web of Nazi escape networks. Investigations revealed a chilling truth. The Nazi escape routes, known as the rat lines, were very real. Through these underground networks, Nazi officers and SS members fled Europe using fake passports. Many traveled through Italy and Spain, helped by sympathizers and corrupt officials. Ships carried them across the Atlantic to Argentina, Brazil, and Chile. Argentina's leader, Juan Perón, even welcomed some Nazis, offering them safety in exchange for their scientific knowledge. Towns in Argentina like Bariloche became known as Little Germany, filled with strange stories of old men with scars, speaking German, hiding their pasts. Some eyewitnesses even claimed to have seen an old man resembling Hitler living in the mountains during the 1950s. The CIA and FBI investigations. Declassified FBI and CIA files added more fuel to the fire. Dozens of reports between 1945 and 1960 mentioned sightings of Hitler in Argentina, Colombia, Brazil. One 1947 report described a man with Hitler's features living near Tondil, Argentina, under the name Adolf Schrittelmeyer. The description matched Hitler in astonishing detail. But despite investigations, no physical evidence ever proved these stories true. Still, they were enough to keep the mystery alive for decades. The myth becomes immortal. As time passed, Hitler transformed from a man into a myth, a figure people couldn't believe had simply died in a bunker. Books, TV shows, and documentaries kept asking, what if Hitler survived? What if he planned a Fourth Reich from the shadows? Even though historians had overwhelming proof of his death, the psychological need to keep the villain alive kept the legend breathing. Because in every generation, humanity creates monsters, and some monsters are easier to imagine than to let go of. The final truth. In 2000, Russian scientists re-examined Hitler's jawbone and teeth, which were still preserved in Moscow. This time, forensic comparison with German dental records confirmed with near certainty the teeth belonged to Adolf Hitler. He had indeed died in his bunker on April 30th, 1945. The myth finally met the truth, but not everyone wanted to believe it. Legacy of lies and lessons. The mystery of Hitler's death became more than a historical puzzle. It became a mirror reflecting humanity's obsession with evil. Every rumor, every conspiracy, every hidden file, it all pointed to one fact. Even after his death, Hitler continued to control minds through fear and fascination. But the true power lies not in the myth, it lies in the memory of millions who suffered, fought, and died so the world could wake from his nightmare.
Final reflection. The bunker collapsed, the empire turned to dust, and the man who once wanted to rule the world left behind nothing but ashes and whispers. Yet, through history, the story of his end became a warning. No matter how strong the lie, truth always survives, buried deep, waiting to be unearthed.